as we beautifully navigated out of the crazy times that were 2020 and 2021, we've arrived at this really interesting space in our life. And I've heard this from many of you ladies where we are really figuring out what the next chapters are going to look like, often feeling like we're not quite who we once were, but not yet who we're becoming. And it's this juiciness and the beautiful space in between where we are now and our relationship desires and all the other things that we desire in our life that I'm so excited to have a really beautiful and powerful conversation with my gorgeous friend and therapist, Ismene. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's so exciting to be here again.
Now, we've got a lot to unpack, and there's so many takeaways. The topic is navigating the liminal space, and I'd love you to just share a little bit about what we're actually meaning when we talk about the liminal space.
I'd love to. So, the great passion of my life has been really getting clear and diving deep and having this experience with transformation. And this has been literally life-changing for me when I realized that within the transformation cycle, there are two spaces where it looks like nothing's happening. One is the liminal space in the gap. So that's after we decide what it is that we deeply desire. And then that commitment of like, this is something that I really want. So not like this, oh, it's coming and then it goes, when we're like, this is something I really want. I'm committed. And that seems to propel us. It's like a whole motivation in itself to move forward. And then once we've kind of like got that desire and that commitment, and I mean like a full body, I'm all in, then we have this space between the decision and the experience. So the desire and the creation. And often, if we don't understand that space, we freak out, we give up, we settle, we panic date, we panic relationship, we give ourselves a really hard time. So really understanding not only what it is, but how to navigate it changes everything.
For those of you that are in between relationships, or it's been quite some time, and just sitting in that space of when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? I just want to recap what some of those symptoms might be. They might be giving a man more of our time and energy, even though we know he's not the right fit, and we're sort of overlooking the red flags because we want to navigate out of that space as quickly as possible and be in a relationship. What are some of the other blocks you find that come up while we're in this space?
So this is generally when we doubt ourselves. So a lot of our insecurities will come up. Maybe we feel like, oh, it's never going to happen. I'm too old. I'm too young. Whatever it is that is kind of under the surface, when we don't have that immediate feedback, we're left with ourselves. So then it's like, okay, what is starting to come up here? Also, we can start to get, lonely. And then from that lack, it's like, oh God, quick, I've got to swipe, or I've got to get on these. So this is really the space where we come face to face with ourselves. Because also when we've activated the desire, things start to move within ourselves. We start to become aware of ourselves. We start to become aware of what it is that we want. We want to have that action. Quite often, like I'll feel it like an actual energy moving through my body. So it can be delicious and exciting, but the longer that we're in it, the more it can be difficult to be with these intense emotions and sensations in the body. Because really, if we think about it, when we have this deep desire, one of the reasons why we want to move forward is because we're feeling sensations in our body. And when we realize that they are just sensations, it means that we can learn ways of navigating through those sensations to not panic date or panic text or, put ourselves in situations at a timing that isn't right. So ultimately, if we can manage those sensations, it means that we can hang on to what really feels right.
I'm really excited to talk more about this. Something that just occurred to me then, as I mentioned in the intro, sometimes we can feel like we're not quite who we were and not quite who we're becoming. And in part of that, we almost feel like men who we might have been attracted to, or men who we perhaps might have dated, we're like outgrowing past patterns. We know that we're no longer a match for those types of people. And yet the conscious partnership, or the type of man that we desire as the woman that we're becoming, feels like perhaps either he doesn't exist, or that relationship, that man is unattainable for me.
Mm. Wow, this is the really juicy part about what I've come to understand about this liminal space. It's like the betwixt and in between. It's the magical space. It's where the transformation happens, and I've come to understand it as the initiation door. So if you think about the desire, it's coming from the next version of yourself, but it's not intangible reality. That's why there's a gap, because if before the desire you desired other things, you desired other types of relationships, you do what was familiar, or what you'd already done belongs to the old version of yourself. So when you really realize that, and I always say this, the desire is the guidance. You are the oracle and you're the roadmap, and without the desire, how do you embody the next version of yourself? So in order to move from where you were to the next version of yourself, you need the desire. You're either going to be, propelled by pleasure, the desire, or propelled by pain. I'm so done with this. And generally wanting to start new relationship patterns is a combination of both. Right? I don't want that. Thanks very much. I do want this. So of course there's a gap, because you haven't yet become that person. And when we start to realize that as not a space to search, we're not searching for the other, we're not searching for the person that's going to help us transform into this new version of ourselves. It's actually the opposite to a lot of what we've been taught. The gap is for you to embody the next version of yourself, and then it's just natural and organic and flowy and easeful to meet the person that is the match for your next version. But where it gets very, very stressful, because this is, I think, like the overriding narrative around relationships, it's like, I'll meet the person and then I'll magically transform. If I wasn't emotionally available, it's all right. I'll search out there, I'll find that person that's emotionally available, and then all of a sudden, magic, I'll become that person. And actually the reality is, unlikely. We're going to meet this person, and even if they're much more emotionally available than our previous version, we're going to be so excited, and then we're going to go, I'm not a match for this. I can't do this. It feels hard. I'm all of a sudden experiencing all these barriers to love. My insecurities haven't gone away. So, and that can be really stressful, because it's like, I'm here, they're there. It feels like such a horrible experience. Whereas actually, if you go, okay, the desire is helping me embody this next version of myself, and then it's just natural and easy and organic that people that I want will be a match to this next version of myself. Can you see how that completely shifts and changes this space?
We've had some beautiful conversations about fears, about desires in some of our past interviews, which, just a teaser, I'm going to make some of those available at the end of this series. But for those that, I guess as a recap or refresher, or anyone who's joining us for the first time, and I know sometimes I'm hearing from women, like, I just kind of feel uninspired. I feel motivated. I feel like I'm in this state of inertia. I feel a little bit stuck. I don't feel excited about anything. Talk to us about, how we connect into this desire then, if we're feeling a bit uninspired.
A really beautiful way of doing this is kind of like reverse engineering it. So when you imagine, when you tap into this deep desire, it's like, what is there? So you go, okay, what I really desire is to feel close and to feel intimate. Because what we're looking for is what turns you on, right? And I don't mean just sexually, but I also do mean sexually, but I mean your aliveness. your life force energy. You know, this is our magnetism. So in terms of elements, you know, the emotions are water. And this is where our, you know, our magnitude comes from. So if you really, and you know, it's our magnetic sexual appeal, really. So if you really dive into this desire, it's like, okay, so what a desire is, and then we're going to go deeper and deeper and deeper and keep asking yourself, what is it that I want? What is it that I want? What is it that I desire? And what we're looking for is that fire, because it is there. It's just that people feel uninspired because quite often they're in these surface old ways of thinking and they go, well, I don't want that. Well, no, that's not going to inspire you. So what we're looking for is the passion and the pleasure and the turn on. So if you can keep going into the desire, like what's the deep desire? What is it that I desire? What is it that I want? And then eventually you get to, you know, you can do this with a friend, you can do it in a journal, you know, you can do it with a coach, like whoever. If it's easier to have someone else have that conversation, but what you're getting to is that activation point, because this is where we experience organic, natural motivation. So say, for example, what you imagine is closeness and passion and the best sex of your life, and you know, you can openly express yourself with someone and that lights you up and that is your fire. Reverse engineer it, come back to, okay, where am I with this? How do I feel about my body? How much pleasure do I allow myself to feel? How do I feel about receiving? What about the intimate relationships in my life? How are my friendship groups? How was, you know, am I sharing my gifts in the world? So can you kind of see that it's like, okay, if this is what I want, how do I come in the present moment to have more of that? We can, you know, start to be our own romance and pleasure and delight. I feel like this is so important for us as women to be able to light our own fire.
And for anyone that's feeling completely disconnected from this, that even having a conversation with a friend or trying to journal this out, it still feels like it might not unlock this, what would you suggest?
Small steps. So, for example, if you've had previous experiences where, and maybe particularly in childhood, where you come from a family where there isn't much intimacy or closeness, actually it can be very, very triggering to, you know, receive pleasure or to receive intimacy from people. So again, it's about just being really kind, really compassionate about where you are. If it feels very triggering in the nervous system, just notice that. So, you know, if it feels panicky, if you feel like you want to shut down or dissociate or overthink, you know, relationships can bring up a lot of old patterns that feel really anxious and difficult and painful. So it's like nervous system health then. So it's like, okay, really soothing, you know, small things. It may be, okay, I'm going to take 5 minutes, you know, and I'm just going to try and sit with my breath. And even though there might be quite intense sensations coming in the body, I just remind myself I'm safe. And we just breathe into that. It can be as short as 3 minutes. Have a lovely bath with candles once a week. You know, practice talking with a friend for 10 minutes. And then after that, if it's really making you feel panicky, just moving away and being really proud of yourself for starting there. Yeah, wherever anyone else is perfect and gorgeous. Yeah, it's being very, very kind and compassionate to ourselves. Yeah.
Let's unpack a little bit more this the understanding of why, when we are in between relationships and we're sitting in this space that feels like waiting, what are some of the underlying reasons why that is so unsettling or uncomfortable for many people?
I think a lot of it is cultural. So, and kind of a reality that we've been existing in for quite a long time, which is predominantly a yang process. So what I mean by that is the more forward motion, progressive, taking action, getting things done, being solution focused. I decide, I do, I create. So it's not that there's anything wrong with that. You know, we need that as well. That can be our real container. But I think you know, and this is what I deal with a lot in my work, is that we haven't developed the other side, the more yin side. And also, you know, which is much more receptive and much more in a being state and much softer and much more about nurturing and giving to ourselves, but also to other people. And a lot of people have got a lot of mental stories about one's good. You know, I'm like nailing my life, I'm hustling all the time. And then the other is like, oh my God, spaciousness. And, you know, I mean, so many of my clients say, I feel guilty because, you know, I feel guilty. I feel like nothing's happening. Their self-esteem drops down. So it's not that this stuff is hard, but our mental processes around it are, you know, I'm not getting anywhere. It's not happening. And I think we've lost a lot of this ancient wisdom about the natural rhythms of ebb and flow. And, you know, there's times for flourishing and coming out, and then there's times for going within, but that they're all part of the same thing. That is how we transform.
So what do we do with the feelings then? The feelings that like you described, of perhaps feeling guilty if we're not doing, if we're not actually throwing effort and attention into creating this relationship or finding this relationship or seeking this relationship. The alternative then for a lot of people might feel like, but if I'm not doing anything, then how am I going to make it happen? Right? So what do we do with that feeling if that has been something that we've felt in the past?
I think honestly, it's such a normal feeling because we've all been so conditioned to believe this. Seriously. You know, I've been doing this work for like forever, and I still sometimes have to think, oh, hang on, it's maybe, you know, come back. So, you know, I just really want to normalize that. I think everyone feels like that because this is the world that we're in. So to come outside of that and to do something different feels like, oh, you know, it brings up some stuff. So just completely normalizing that. But it's challenging this idea that if we're in a more being state and we're nurturing ourselves and it's more of an inward process, a much more intuitive emotional process, that we're not doing anything. You know, this is as much the work and is, you know, as much bringing your desire to you than the physical outward directive work. And I think once we realize that, it's so important. So let's just give an example of, say you feel self-conscious in your body, and you know, the doing part might be, right, okay, so I'm going to go and get a new wardrobe, and I'm going to, you know, get some sexy underwear, and I'm going to go to the gym, and I'm going to eat better. Okay, gorgeous. But then just imagine you're meeting your person in the future, but actually then the heart work hasn't come. So, you know, you don't feel any better. Your body may be different. You look fantastic, but inwardly, after the initial like, whoa, and all the hormones calm down, then you go, but I don't deserve this person. And what do they see in me? And, you know, then maybe the jealousy comes out, then the insecurity comes out, then we start acting in ways that we don't like, and then we might start to sabotage the relationship. You know, this is where the trauma responses start to come out. So when we really realize that both is needed, this is the inner marriage. And both of them are the work. And I think it just takes this rethinking that this is so valuable and it's so needed, and it is helping you achieve your dream and experience your desire. And remember, in a relationship, although a lot of us have been conditioned that we have to earn love, remember, in relationship, whether or not that's with your friends or your colleagues or your family or your clients, we're being in a relationship. You're not, you know, yes, you may do things, but ultimately, why do we want to be in a relationship? To be in this being state of being with another, with sharing with another, you know, lying down with some, even intimacy. is in the being state. So this is another reason that once the desire arrives, as in the co-creation of the relationship, if we have a real issue with being, how is this relationship going to deepen and grow?
What are some other examples of the kind of work, I would say in inverted commas, the kind of work that is really valuable for us as we are in this beautiful liminal space?
So depending on what your next stage of yourself and the relationship is, so it's going to be really personal to you. For all of us, it's looking at what are these barriers towards love. More and more, I always feel like our desires are always there, but this space between what was and what's becoming is just like, how do we let this in on a deeper level? So things like communication skills, emotional availability. And with the best will in the world, while we may imagine that we can be so much more emotionally available with someone when we meet them, this is something that we can always work with, so that when it comes to it, it's actually easier for us. So the more that we do in the liminal space, when the co-creation comes, it's so much easier because we've already worked through a lot of this stuff. So fears around love, fears around worthiness, being our own source of delight, having a really juicy lifestyle, even if that means, well, I'm going to go and do that hobby that I've always wanted to do and I freaking love it. But like, I'm going to hang out more with my girlfriends and that gives me all that oxytocin and we're having like the best time. But also like basic things around nervous system. Am I eating well? Am I hydrating? Am I taking care of my body? How well am I sleeping? Because really nervous system health is our resilience. So even when we get triggered or we're in that excitement, we've got a soft place to land within.
Yeah, it's really interesting that oftentimes the only benchmark we have for how well we're doing with this inner work is whether he's shown up or not. Oftentimes we don't know. And I love that you've just given us some examples of what that might look like when we really feel like this is becoming an actualized part of us. How else might we know while we're still in this space of the in-between that we are on the right track, that what we're doing is working?
It feels, for me, I'll give an example from someone that used to be so codependent and was looking for so much in the other. So for me, I was looking for safety and I was looking for security and I was looking for validation and I was looking to love myself and I was looking for the closeness and the intimacy. And literally, I'm talking about someone that had back-to-back relationships for 20 years. And then when I split up with my fiance, it was like, okay, I didn't imagine that my life would be like this at 38, but it's so much more beautiful than anything I could have imagined. So I think for me, while I have a desire, I'm kind of starting to have a desire to be in a partnership again. I'm not like rushing out and feeling like it needs to happen immediately. I'm not looking for them to feel anything within myself because I feel very safe and secure in myself. And this has taken me a long time because I've got a real history of trauma in my family. So I really grew up with no relational security within my family. So for me, this has been huge. I didn't even know that this was fully possible. So this is why it feels really juicy to talk about. But I feel very safe in myself. I feel like I can really give myself everything that I want. I really feel like I've identified a lot of my gifts so I can share them with the world. My life feels very purposeful, very meaningful. And I never imagined that I could feel those things without being in a relationship. So because I don't have a desire for them to fill everything, it now feels more about sharing my life with someone, co-creating with them in terms of having a beautiful life. Totally wanting this balance between being my own person and having my independence, while also feeling now that I can trust myself to be really intimate and a safe person for them, because I used to be super volatile. Super volatile, because I was so hypersensitive about, oh my God, they haven't said this, or they didn't hug me, that means they don't love me. And then So it's so different. It's not just in terms of what I feel, but now what I know that I can give. And I tell you, I didn't often think about, oh, I'll give this. I like, give this to me. That's been a massive shift. What can I give to you? How can I support you? How can I bring out the best in you? I never thought about that, ever, ever, ever. Sad to say, but it's true, because I felt so empty.
Isn't that fascinating? But in many respects, if you look at it, then now you actually feel like you're bringing a better version of yourself to relationships.
Yeah, and a vision I can feel proud of, because I feel when we're very emotionally empty, it's not about us not being bad. It's not about us being bad people or not good people, or that we don't have so much to give. We all do. We're all amazing. But the emptier that we are, the more reactive we are. The emptier we are, the more sensitive we are. The more, the emptier are, we're going to be checking every single syllable on a text. And, it really, really matters. We're likely to stay in things that are just not right for us because we're so empty. Anything will do, rather than, overflow. I'm in a much more overflowing state. And then, of course, you're going to attract someone, hello, that is in an overflow state, and that's got a lot of inner wealth, because that's really what it is. It's inner wealth.
There's this interesting phenomena that I have noticed, and it's only on reflection that I noticed that I was like this in my 20s, probably 30s, nearly up to the age of 40. And that is that it was like there was a void in my mind that was the relationship void. And whether I was in a relationship or not in a relationship, there had to be someone in this spot. There had to be someone that I was thinking about. Even if there wasn't really any kind of like fresh new love interest, I'd have like an old flame or a placeholder or someone who I could just sort of activate this feeling of, or maybe it could be him. But there had to be someone there. As soon as someone went out, I had to imagine that there was someone else there. And this was all happening in my head, right? But one of the things that I really noticed is as I transitioned into a more healthy, self-evolved place, I didn't feel the need to have this somebody, anybody in my little relationship potential space. Is that something that you can relate to?
Oh my God. Absolutely. It was like an obsession. Yes, because it was terrifying to not have that. It felt too empty. The void felt too big. Yeah, and I would feel real panic. Hence why I was just like, finish a relationship, next relationship, not dating all these people. It's only been much later on in my life that I could say, you know what, I've really got this. I trust myself. And even though at the beginning it was super hard, but people that follow me will know I love a self date. I date myself at least once a week. And it's been revolutionary. I buy myself flowers. I might take myself on a lunch date or a dinner date. I haven't got it on now, but I bought myself an engagement ring after I split up with my ex-fiance, because what I realized was I was waiting for someone else to treat me in the way that I didn't have to wait. I could just do it for myself. And there was something super symbolic about, I'd waited all this, about 15 years to get engaged. And it was, so centered around, I'm going to get the ring and it's going to be the diamond. And then when we split up, something really hit home. I didn't need to wait. I could have bought me up myself that ring at any point, and then I did go and buy myself a ring, and it's super symbolic, because that isn't why I wanted to get married. Why I wanted to get married was the intimacy and the sharing. But I think a lot of us get so stuck on the shiny things, and we realize, hey, I can do that for myself.
And I think there's a lot to answer for as in exactly this topic as to why maybe a lot of relationships don't have longevity, because I do think there is some confusion about what it is that we're really looking for in a relationship. What is it? Because it isn't the ring, like you said. although we can get really fixated on that.
Yes.
So in dating yourself, in navigating this liminal space, in being able to feel comfortable without having someone in that space that we're focusing on as our love interest all the time, what is it that we are actually looking for in a relationship that we can bring to ourselves now?
I think, honestly, after working with people for so long, what none of us want to do is do life alone. And what I mean by that is not taking yourself out for a day or buying beautiful clothes or like, it's not that. It's that we want to be seen and heard and felt and appreciated. So for me, it's intimacy. It's this, because life can be challenging in many ways, but what we can deal with is challenges when we have intimacy and when we have support. And I can tell you, after literally doing this work for 13 years, nearly, if not every single wounding, that every insecurity, every fear comes down to at the core, not feeling loved enough, not feeling seen, not feeling safe, not feeling, that we've got a really good support network. And for me, when that is remedied in ourselves, but also, in our circle with the world, then as humans, we start to thrive. And I think quite often we think the relationship is this or that, and I'm not saying that it can't be so many other things, the sharing of experiences, but I think at the core, the relationships that are last or that are meaningful or have longevity and resilience, it's the depth, it's the meaning, it's having someone by your side, it's being able to be all of who you are and feel really held in that. And I think nothing else gets close to that. That's just my personal opinion, but I just feel like this is the heart of it. This is what we're all craving, this deep connection with one another.
I'd love to just circle back a little bit, which may be a little bit off topic, but something that I've noticed just in recent, maybe the last year or two, post-pandemic anyway, is a sense, and many of my friends are also therapists, coaches, mentors, and holding space for other women, and particularly the friends of mine that live in Indonesia, where I live in, where the majority of the population, we don't even speak the same language, that there's this real sense of I know when I meet up with my friends, it almost goes one way or the other. Either one just completely talks and talks and talks, and it's almost like there's been 2 weeks or 3 weeks worth of, I just need someone to hear that this happened and how I've been feeling, and unpack all of this stuff in my life that I hadn't had a chance to talk to people about. And I know I've done that as well. I've just noticed that when you touched on, we all need to feel seen and heard, I just get this sense that there's so many of us that just really feel like we aren't having enough of these conversations where we feel like we are, someone's holding space for us, or we are just being heard.
I think, these are changing times. I think we're re-examining what a connection means for us. So although I love the internet, I mean, we get to be on different sides of the world. It's so amazing. And we'll be able to connect with people from all over the world. So it's like a great gift. But I think, a lot of our lifestyle means that we're disconnected. And I think also talking about the yin and the yang, right? Again, this kind of much more exterior versions of ourselves tend to be more celebrated. So about the achievements and what we've done and how busy we are and what we put on Instagram. But actually, a lot of people want to deeply connect, but they don't know how. They feel, particularly men, but also women as well, we've got a lot of these blocks about vulnerability. So, if we're in, the personal development field or whatever, it's maybe easier for us, and likelihood is we've had experiences that have helped us to be here and want to. But I think the general population, it's hard because there is all these ideas about vulnerability as weakness. You know, I can't not know. I've always got to know. And then I think we can be very critical of ourselves when we're vulnerable. When we say, hey, like, this is happening for me. It's for a lot of people, it brings up a lot of shame. And how do you connect deeply with people? In the vulnerability. You know, I see this all the time. People will love, they will like this. They may admire you. They may like be like, oh yeah, you know, I'll follow her and she inspires me. But I tell you what creates longevity and what you know creates love and real connection and people really wanting to be there for you is like, we need to know your heart. Like, who are you? Where have you come from? What have you struggled with? Because without that, a lot of people feel alone, because they think that if they have a bad feeling or they're not on their A game all the time, they're getting something wrong. And I think this is a massive block in deep connection for people.
I totally agree with everything you said. And I am also going to bring up that as you were talking, there was a part of me that was thinking, but I don't want to dump all of my stuff onto one friend who I might catch up with for a couple of hours, or I don't want to dump all this stuff that I've been processing on my partner. So I noticed some judgment about that. Like, I don't want to be the one that catches up with a friend that just talks the whole time and doesn't allow space. I don't want my partner to feel responsible for all this stuff that I'm going through. So what can we do about that in times when we might not have opportunities to connect as much as what would be really beneficial? How do we process those sorts of things that so within ourselves we feel as though we're seen, heard, and acknowledged?
Yeah, but I think that's a beautiful example. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that, like, it comes from unless you've had something really difficult happen, it comes from, you know, it's like starvation. Right? It's emotional starvation. And then we see someone and we're like, what? No. So that's not what I'm talking about, dumping on people. Because actually, if we're in our heart and we're emotionally regulating and we're taking care of ourselves and we're finding different ways of expressing our emotions, we generally, unless we're having a really difficult time and something unexpected happen, will not do that. It's actually that happens when we are not taking care of our hearts. And then we're like, this builds up, and we're like, right? So that's actually a symptom of not taking care of our own hearts. So I kind of see it like a web around yourself, you know, because not one person is going to be able to do things. So it's like, where can so imagine the element of flow, water. We need different containers to our emotions to flow through. So one, if we try and pour our entire emotions, we're gonna drown. They're gonna drown. It's not gonna be a good experience. They will not want to hang out with you for coffee. I can assure you, be like, dear God, then they'll have to go and empty it. No, it's not that. But there's like different ways that we can do it. So we can do it, you know, physically. So a really great way of, particularly if your language of love. So, you know, can you do things like joyful movement? Can you get the emotions to flow through your body? Can you go to things like ecstatic dance? Or your thing might be going running in, you know, along the beach if you're somewhere like that, or, you know, going for a walk in the forest, which is what I do with the dogs. You know, it might be having massages if you really like to be touched. Yeah. So knowing what your language of love is. If yours is words like me, no surprise that I became a coach and therapist.
It is.
You know, I find it's very therapeutic for me to write. Or even, you know, I go to chanting. So I use my voice and sing. So it might be, you know, spiritually, it just, you know, that we do a lot of stuff that we come in a group. So for me, for example, because I can get tired of talking because there's a lot of my job, going to yoga, I'm in a group. I've got a fantastic yoga teacher. So I'm with people, I'm in a community, but I'm in my own process. Or where I go to work, you know, I'll often go to like my members club. So again, I'm around people. The staff are just amazing. I love them. Often I'll see someone, hey, but I'm in my own process. So it's like we need to create containers for our flow, lots of different ones, so that if one's overflowing or not available, we feel met and heard in lots of different ways. Yeah, hobbies, purpose, gifts, all the things.
And right below the video today is actually a really beautiful experience. Tell us about what gift you have to be able to download today.
So we've done lots and lots of talking today. So I wanted to do something a little bit more practical. So we're really going to I've created a worksheet to get you to really think about, who is this next version of myself? Who is the match for the man of my dreams? And how do I get to embody it? So we get to practically sit down and look, what do I need to learn, experience, feel, work through? So tangible things. And then I've also got a lovely guided activation that you can listen to that just will help you see the power and the gift of the liminal space and start to reframe it into something that's magical.
What final thoughts or additional things would you like to share with the ladies? What would you like them to know?
I would like them just to use this as an invitation to realize that the desire is coming. The desire is coming. You can trust yourself. It's happening. This is also an act of surrender and trust. And if you remember that it's coming and it's already done, how can you use this liminal space as an invitation and initiation to become the next version of yourself? And how can you really step into and embody that? And how can you really enjoy that and find that really a pleasure and a delight to get to know the next version of yourself?
Thank you for joining us, and thanks everyone. We will see you all again tomorrow for the Love Breakthrough Virtual Retreat.
Ooh.